This is a piece about, nuisance phone calls. They've just introduced a rule or a regulation or a law or something so that the caller who calls you up these cold calls on the telephone at home, they have to give the telephone number, of the place they are calling from, or the device, or what a machine or whatever it is they're calling from. Now, quite often these days it's a computer system, and if you're wondering why you've gone into the telephone preference service, TPS, and sent them your details so that you are not called. I mean, that always made me slightly suspicious. You hand your number to somebody and then they'll make sure nobody calls it. That's awfully like giving your number to someone and telling them that you will be at home to receive the calls. However, that's what's meant to happen with it. It prevents calls. So, the caller ID is now meant to come up. And the caller ID, therefore, is their number, and you'll be able to say, oh, that's that nuisance call, and so on. Or give the details, the number to somebody. If you wanted the regulator, if you wanted how you can go with the TPS, telephone preference service, with your number, and then you still get calls, it's because someone has a machine that runs software that just goes through all the possible permutations of numbers within certain parameters and calls all those numbers. Because it only takes a millisecond or something of processing time for it to figure out that nobody's answering or the call's dead or whatever it is. So it's not very sophisticated, it's still a pain in the ass. I'm going to talk about a particular kind of nuisance call though. And this is fax machines calling you. Now this doesn't happen very often. It used to happen a lot more often, but it doesn't happen very often now. But I'll tell you what happened in my case. There were two situations where I got a fax machine calling me. You know it's a fax machine because the telltale is this. Every 3 minutes or 5 minutes it redials and retries, and it does that something like 5 or 6 times. So it will do that series of 5 or 6 attempts, then stop. Then a while later somebody will set it off again and it'll do its 5 or 6 attempts. Now, you know it's a fax machine because when you lift up the handset in your house, on the landline I'm talking about, you get this bird, like a high-speed bird chirping call sound, and this is the fax machine. It's a modem. It's a thing we used to use before we had Wi-Fi. It's the old-fashioned kind of modem. So it's an audible chirp, yeah? So that's what tells you, that's the other telltale. When you answer your phone, it's gobbledygook chirping sounds. So what I got was one situation, it was someone calling, and all I had to go on, I did have the number because I had caller ID and I did have the number. So in this particular situation, I thought, you know what, and I've done this before, for all it's a pain in the ass, I'm going to spend 2 days going through the phone book. This is before the phone book became really thin, but still, businesses still tend to be in it. So I went through the phone book, literally looking for the number that I had dug out, because when I called British Telecom, who I have to say have always been unhelpful, never known British Telecom to knowingly do you a favour. When I was at work, they used to deny it was all their fault, and they'd get somebody else. They'd kick you round for 3-4 days, a week and a half, looking at everybody else, and then they'd finally fix their problem at their end. And of course, by then you've had somebody come into your business, you've called any other supplier to do with telecoms, they've gone around doing a couple of things, and then of course you don't know if it's BT or if it's them that's fixed it. But after a few years experience, decades, you come to realise that it's always BT. They're extremely naughty. They never admit to anything, they always make you go to other suppliers, and then it turns out it's them anyway. That's BT. Never knowingly done you a favour. So they were very unhelpful. I said, well, if you could tell me whose number this is. I said, it's obviously a business, it's a fax machine calling me all the time. I don't know what it is, I said, but you know. I'm not going to ring up somebody's old aunt and be harassing them. I said, this is a business calling. And it's obviously a mistake, because why are they calling me and I don't have a fax machine set up? So they wouldn't help. Okay, thanks a lot, BT. So I looked through the phone book, starting at the beginning, I just went through the business numbers section. Now for a start, that's a lot smaller, you see. Anyway, I went through, it took me about 8 hours, and finally I came, luckily, the place was the Copper Works in Leeds. It sounds like it could be a nightclub, but it's not. It's the Copper Works. They do things with copper. And they'd been faxing this number for whatever reason. Usually they just jumble up your number, you see. They've jumbled up the number they meant to call with a couple of digits here and there, because someone's tried to half remember it, or they typed it in wrongly. Whatever the reason is, so they called the wrong person. I then, having found the fax number in the business entry of the phone book, which, like I say, took 8 hours or so, I then rang the phone number beside it, and in no uncertain terms, in the politest possible way, made it clear to them, look, you're ringing me, completely pointless, because I'm obviously not who you want to talk to. Can you please get whoever it is and stop them from calling me? I said, because I'm trying hard to be polite, I said, but this is days and days, and now you've made me spend sort of a day or a day and a half going through in alphabetical order, looking for a tiny print phone number, doing my eyes in. I said, I'm not pleased, so would you please... So anyway, so the guy said he'd sort it, and indeed, I believe he did sort it, so that was that. The second instance was more persistent, and I dealt with it in a much harsher way. Bear in mind that a fax machine is dialing my number, and I have ascertained that it's 99.9% they don't actually want me, so they've jumbled up the number. So the first thing to realise is they are not, this business that is ringing you, actually conscious of your telephone number. Okay? You are in effect the most invisible person in the world to them. Yeah? They're sending it to you, but they don't know it's you. They think they've rung some other number. So you're in a good position there. You could do something pretty naughty and... serve them right. This was after days and days of somebody fax machine calling me. I thought, yeah. Because one of the things that I occasionally have been known to do is record stuff. Audio stuff. So you get bring. It's really quite annoying. So, and then of course I come from the generation that takes telephones seriously. So, I apologise for this video being chopped up. The memory card ran out of space, and then the batteries also decided they were going to be exhausted. So I sent this faxed sheet back, or sent it on rather, to the proper number that was in the fax header. Somebody had obviously mistyped it, but they must either have always mistyped it, or they had it in some auto dialer system and they got it wrong in that. That would explain why it keeps going wrong. They put the fax number of this customer in some memory in their dialer, and then they just kept on sending it to me because they got the number wrong when they put it in. So I, in effect, intercepted the fax. The fax being sent to the wrong number came to me. I extracted the fax in paper format. The fax machine at their end thinks it's sent fine, says sent fine. I carefully edit it, send it on to the number that on the header sheet says it's meant to be going to. It's one digit wrong. And then what was very interesting was it was about 3 months later. Now that the wrong number didn't stop right away. But 3 months later or something, it's quite a few months later, this guy calls up from this refrigeration company. And he says, I'm sorry to bother you, he said, but we have a situation I wonder if you can help me resolve. I said, right. And he said, we've perhaps had something going on, or he said something. I'm not sure he came straight out with what it was, but I said, "Are you a refrigeration company?" I said, "Yes." I said, "You're in Hull." He said, "Yeah." I said, "Right. So you're the ones that said, no disrespect, but I wrote, fuck off, across the paper and sent you it back. That didn't stop you calling me. Then you're the ones that I changed the quotation on and sent it on to your customer." I said, "So did you not get the order then? And that's made it important enough to you, so you come back to me now and say, you haven't by any way, shape or form tampered with our quotation, have you?" Right? He must have pieced together what happened. He must have gone and looked at, or asked someone to go and look at, what outgoing phone numbers were actually dialed, and he's realised they rang the wrong number by mistake. So that's the level you get to. If you think there's not any need for tighter regulation on cold calls and on similar things, any tighter regulation on that also stops mistaken calls. And what I'm telling you is, from my perspective, my experience, people just don't bother a damn. You can write, as I did, F off, and it doesn't stop them. You can change their quotations, and it may not stop them. Eventually, they will stop. But by that time, you've probably had weeks of nuisance, and I mean on a daily basis. Because remember, they keep trying to get through because they've got the wrong number. So the person at the other end keeps saying they haven't got whatever it was, so they keep trying to send it. So this resending drives you bananas. So in the end, the thing that stopped it eventually, and not right away, was me changing their quotation and sending the onward quote, having in effect intercepted it. You know, they lost money. That is what makes companies think twice. A corporate apology is money. Anybody that thinks a person representing the company apologising to you is a corporate apology is naive. I won't call them foolish, but you see this lot, Alton Towers, the girls that lost a leg. The corporate apology that's worth a damn is a boatload of cash. Never mind they're sorry and it's a terrible thing to happen and blah blah blah. Pay a boatload of cash, and I'll give you a pointer on that. Think of a number that you think would be reasonable compensation and multiply it by 10. I knew a guy when I was younger, he got compensated for both his legs being chopped off. He got something like £70,000 in the early 80s. And by 3 or 4 years later, he had got through most of it, and his fiancée, wife, whatever, she had left him. Okay? There's your example. In the early 1980s, £70,000 or £80,000, it would have bought you. It would have bought you 3 of the 4-bedroomed house that we lived in. Something like that. It would have. You're talking quite a lot of money. You're talking no problem to buy a very expensive house in a very expensive area. But that's all it does for you. You want compensation from a corporate, it's only about money. That's the only corporate apology worth a damn. If you cost these people a nuisance call your money, then they'll stop. Thanks for watching and listening.